Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into the life and ideas of Giordano Bruno. He's often remembered as a martyr for science, but as we'll uncover, that's a very simplified view of a much more complex figure.
Right, there's so much more to his story.
Absolutely. And we're going to be using this great article from The Spiritual Seek to guide our exploration of his philosophical and spiritual journey.
It's a fascinating journey for sure. He was living and working during the Renaissance, a period of such intellectual upheaval. Old ideas were constantly being challenged, and Bruno really embodied that spirit of questioning and exploration.
He was much more than just an astronomer.
Exactly. He was a philosopher, a spiritual seeker, a real critic of the established order.
And one of his most radical ideas was this concept of an infinite universe filled with countless worlds.
A direct challenge to that accepted Aristotelian Ptolemaic model of a finite universe.
Which he explored in his work on the infinite universe and worlds.
And what's so intriguing is that for Bruno, this wasn't just a scientific theory. It was a reflection of his pantheistic worldview.
The idea that God is inseparable from the universe and present in everything.
Exactly. So this infinite universe was a manifestation of God's infinite nature.
So instead of a distant, detached God, Bruno envisioned a God that was woven into the very fabric of existence. How do you think that perspective might have felt to someone living in the 16th century?
Radical, definitely. Maybe even liberating, because it challenged those rigid hierarchies and categories of the dominant Aristotelian scholasticism of the time. Bruno was all about rejecting limitations and embracing a unified view of reality. He even went so far as to propose that all matter possesses a form of life or consciousness, this concept known as animism.
A powerful idea, especially given that the more mechanistic view of the universe was gaining traction around that time. It feels like he was really pushing back against the grain on multiple fronts.
Absolutely. And those conflicts extended beyond just scientific thought. His clash with the Catholic Church wasn't just about astronomy. It was about his radical spiritual ideas that challenged the very authority of the Church.
The article really highlights those critiques, like his view that the Church stifled intellectual and spiritual freedom.
Right.
Bruno felt that religious dogma actually restricted human potential, and that fear-based tactics like threats of damnation were used to enforce conformity. Instead, he championed personal experience, reason, and contemplation of nature over blind faith.
And it's important to note here that Bruno wasn't against spirituality. He was deeply interested in exploring it, but he challenged those methods and the limitations imposed by the Church.
And his views on the nature of God and the universe were certainly unorthodox for his time.
Definitely. He even embraced the concept of reincarnation, totally at odds with Christian doctrine.
And then there's that interest in Hermetic magic, which the Church viewed with deep suspicion.
They saw it as a dangerous attempt to bypass their authority and directly access divine power.
So we're seeing that Bruno's cosmology, his view of the universe, was deeply intertwined with his spiritual beliefs. It wasn't just about stars and planets. It was about understanding the divine and humanity's place within it all.
Exactly. He saw the study of the universe as a spiritual practice, a way to connect with the divine. He believed that contemplation of the cosmos could lead to inner transformation and enlightenment. And crucially, he emphasized the role of imagination in understanding divine mysteries.
It's so interesting because we often tend to separate science and spirituality, seeing them as distinct domains. But for Bruno, they seem to be interconnected paths leading towards a greater understanding of reality.
And this is where his philosophical foundations come into play. He was heavily influenced by Neoplatonism and Hermeticism, traditions that emphasize the interconnectedness of all things and saw the universe as emanating from the divine.
Can you unpack those a bit for us?
Sure. Neoplatonism basically views reality as a series of emanations from this single source, the one or the good.
Okay.
Everything in the universe flows from that source and seeks to return to it. This idea really resonated with Bruno's concept of an infinite universe reflecting the infinite nature of God.
And what about Hermeticism?
It's a more esoteric tradition, focused on hidden knowledge and the interconnectedness of the cosmos. It really emphasizes symbolism and the idea that the microcosm of the individual reflects the macrocosm of the universe. And this resonated with Bruno's belief in that interconnectedness of all things and his interest in those hidden connections within the universe.
So these ideas form the foundation of Bruno's thought, and they really influenced his unconventional views on the universe and spirituality. But as we know, These views ultimately led to conflict.
Yes, Bruno's radical ideas put him at odds with the church.
He challenged not only their scientific views, but also their authority and their control over spiritual matters.
Right.
His story really serves as a powerful reminder about the importance of intellectual and spiritual freedom and the dangers of suppressing dissenting views. It's fascinating how his ideas still resonate centuries later.
They really do. It's really incredible to think about someone in the 16th century envisioning such a vast and complex universe without the tools and technologies we have today. It makes you wonder what he would think of our current understanding of the cosmos if he were alive today.
I think he would be fascinated by our discoveries, like our exploration of distant galaxies and the sheer scale of the universe that we're only beginning to comprehend.
Oh, absolutely. But I also think he would still emphasize the importance of personal experience, reason, and contemplation. He might even caution us against relying solely on technology and data to understand the universe.
Reminding us of the role of imagination and intuition.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that even with all our advancements, we still don't know everything. And perhaps there are ways of knowing that go beyond empirical observation and scientific measurement.
Bruno certainly thought so.
And this brings us to another important aspect of Bruno's thought: his critique of religious dogma. As the article explains, he saw the church as stifling intellectual and spiritual freedom, using dogma as a means of control.
Right. He believed that their teachings were too anthropocentric, putting humanity at the center of everything. He also criticized their reliance on fear as a way to enforce obedience, particularly the threat of damnation. For Bruno, this really hindered true spiritual growth. He advocated for a spirituality based on personal experience, reason, and a deep connection with the natural world, not blind faith.
It's interesting how his critique of the church aligns with his vision of an infinite universe. It's as if he was challenging the limitations imposed not just by the church, but also by our own limited perspectives.
Exactly. He was calling for a more expansive view of both the universe and our place within it. He saw humanity as part of something much grander, interconnected with the cosmos and with the divine.
This idea of interconnectedness seems to be a recurring theme in his work. It's present in his concept of an infinite universe, in his pantheistic view of God, and even in his embrace of animism, the belief that all matter possesses a form of life or consciousness.
And this interconnectedness wasn't just a theoretical concept for him. It was something to be experienced, something that could lead to inner transformation and a deeper understanding of reality.
So how did he propose we access this interconnectedness, this deeper understanding?
Through a combination of contemplation, reason, and imagination. He believed that by studying the universe, by pondering its mysteries, we could come to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place within the grand scheme of things. But he also recognized the limits of logic and reason.
He didn't dismiss the importance of empirical observation and scientific inquiry, but he seemed to understand that there are realms of knowledge that might be inaccessible through those methods alone.
Right. He often spoke of the need for a more intuitive, more imaginative approach to understanding the universe and the divine, and this is where his concept of mysticism comes into play.
Can you elaborate on what Bruno meant by mysticism?
It's important to distinguish his mysticism from the type often associated with religious institutions. He wasn't seeking union with God through rituals or practices dictated by the church.
So his mysticism was more grounded in his philosophical explorations and his understanding of nature and the cosmos.
Precisely. For Bruno, understanding the infinite universe was a form of spiritual enlightenment. It was a way to connect with the divine without intermediaries, without relying on the dogma or interpretations of any particular institution.
It's almost as if he saw the universe itself as a sacred text, something to be studied and contemplated. And in a way, his belief in reincarnation ties into that.
Yes. The concept of reincarnation, which was completely at odds with Christian doctrine, suggests a continuous journey of the soul, a constant process of learning, growing, and evolving. It implies that our understanding of the universe and the divine is an ongoing process, not something that can be achieved in a single lifetime.
And then there's his interest in magic, particularly Hermetic magic. The church viewed this as a dangerous attempt to access divine power directly. But for Bruno, it seems to have been about something more than just power.
In Bruno's time, magic wasn't just about tricks or illusions. It was often viewed as a way of understanding and interacting with the hidden forces within the universe.
He seemed drawn to the idea that humans could tap into those forces, that there was a deeper layer of reality that could be accessed through specific practices and knowledge.
And this ties back into his overall vision of spiritual freedom. He sought freedom from dogma, from fear-based control, and from the limitations imposed by those in power. Bruno yearned for a spirituality that embraced diversity within unity, a concept beautifully reflected in his vision of an infinite universe filled with countless worlds, all expressions of an equally infinite God.
It's a powerful and inspiring vision. But as we know, Bruno's pursuit of truth and his willingness to challenge authority came at a steep price.
Yes, his execution in 1600 was a tragic consequence of his unwavering commitment to his beliefs.
While often portrayed as a martyr for science, the article clarifies that the charges against him were more likely related to his theological heresies than his astronomical theories.
Right. His pantheistic worldview, his denial of core Christian doctrines, his belief in reincarnation, and his interest in magic, all of these were seen as threats by the church.
It's a sobering reminder that even in a time of intellectual and artistic flourishing like the Renaissance, there were limits to what was considered acceptable. And those who dared to transgress those limits often faced severe consequences.
Bruno's story highlights the dangers of suppressing dissenting voices and underscores the importance of intellectual and spiritual freedom.
It also raises questions about how we approach knowledge and understanding in our own time. Do we allow for diverse perspectives? Do we encourage questioning and critical thinking? Or do we fall into the trap of dogma and unquestioning acceptance of authority?
These are important questions to consider as we continue to explore the universe and grapple with the complexities of our existence. It's a legacy that encourages us to approach the world with a sense of curiosity and wonder, and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
And to remember that the pursuit of knowledge can be both a personal and a collective endeavor. Bruno's ideas spread and influenced others, even though he was ultimately silenced. It speaks to the power of sharing knowledge and engaging in those meaningful conversations.
Absolutely. We see that in his own life. He was a prolific writer and speaker, always seeking to engage others in dialogue about the nature of the universe, God, humanity's place within it all.
And his story reminds us that those conversations are still so relevant today. How do we balance scientific inquiry with spiritual exploration? How do we embrace those diverse perspectives while still seeking some common ground? How do we ensure intellectual and spiritual freedom in a world where those freedoms are often under threat?
These are questions that we as individuals and as a society really need to grapple with, and perhaps Bruno's life and work can offer us some guidance as we navigate these really complex issues.
Maybe one of the most important lessons that we can glean from Bruno is the importance of thinking for ourselves, questioning what we're told, and being willing to challenge that status quo.
Yeah, he reminds us that true knowledge isn't about blindly accepting dogma or authority. It's about engaging in a process of inquiry, of critical thinking, of exploring different perspectives, and ultimately arriving at our own understanding of the world.
And that process of inquiry shouldn't be limited to just the intellectual realm. Bruno's life really demonstrates the importance of integrating our intellectual pursuits with our spiritual and emotional lives.
He really saw the study of the universe as a spiritual practice, a way to connect with the divine and to cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness.
And he emphasized the role of imagination and intuition in that process. He understood that there are truths that can't be grasped through logic and reason alone. Sometimes we need to tap into other ways of knowing, other ways of perceiving the world.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life and ideas of Giordano Bruno, we're left with this sense of his enduring relevance.
His story challenges us to think bigger, to question those assumptions, and to embrace the interconnectedness of all things.
It reminds us that the pursuit of truth is a journey, not a destination, and it requires courage, curiosity, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
And perhaps most importantly, Bruno's legacy reminds us that each of us has the potential to contribute to that journey, to add our own unique perspectives and insights to this ongoing conversation about the nature of the universe and our place within it.
So we encourage you to continue exploring these ideas, to engage in those conversations, to question, to challenge, and to never stop seeking a deeper understanding of the world around you and the world within you.
Because as Bruno's life so eloquently demonstrates, the pursuit of truth, whether scientific, philosophical, or spiritual, is a journey that enriches not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us. And ultimately, it contributes to the evolution of human consciousness itself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations of fascinating figures and ideas. Until then, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep wondering.